Early access video games. This is a topic that comes up a lot on stream. You don't like playing a game early? Like sometimes it's like a year early. What do you mean? Isn't that so cool? No. Ludo. Lingo. Hello and welcome to Ludo Lingo episode 10. I will not be making a 16-minute episode this week. If this video somehow is longer than like 8 minutes, stop watching. Click off right now. Hold me to it. I don't like early access for video games. And by that, I mean games like Hades 2 or Hades 1 or Baldur's Gate 3, Rogue Legacy 2. There's tons of games on Steam that go this route that I don't have any interest in necessarily, but those games that I just mentioned, I do have a lot of interest in and I like them very much. So as you can see, I don't think that early access actually harms the game itself. That would be pretty silly to state. And I also don't think that it's necessarily like a bad business practice. I know that people like to come at it from that angle, and I'm not really on board with that either. So what's my problem? Why do I always complain when a game that I'm interested in launches in early access? Well, let me tell you. There's probably countless games that I'm not even aware of were in early access. Since I've been a little bit more tuned in and how connected everyone seems to be on the internet now in terms of like discussing video games, this problem has become a lot more apparent. The big example right now is Hades 2 has been out in early access probably a couple months at this point. I wish that I could be in the conversation talking about it, but I do not like playing games early when they're not done. I don't understand why people like it so much. I'm not super jazzed to play it right now. People are constantly complaining about games being released in a state that is not complete, yet go out of their way to buy into games at full price or close to it. Not every situation is the exact same, and eat that cost up front, which again, a lot of people complain about, and rightfully so in some ways. I'm against like pre-ordering generally because I don't think that you should buy into a game before you've seen what other people think about it necessarily, especially before they're not complete and you don't know when they'll be complete. That's crazy to me. The craziness is compounded by the fact that people constantly complain about games not being done and them having paid for an unfinished product. Now I know what the argument to this is or would be, and that is simply that, well, they're claiming that it's in early access. They're admitting to you that it's not done, therefore it doesn't count. The other people releasing a game are claiming the game is finished, therefore it's a different situation. And I kind of just don't think that it is. I will give you some rope on that argument. There's truth to it, but it's still the same situation in the end. Just because you paid for it early doesn't mean that it's not the same situation where it's going to have a 1.0 release and it's still going to be unfinished, because it's definitely still going to get patched after that. So it ends up in the same position anyways. And you don't know for sure that it's going to be in a place that you are totally deeming acceptable at that point. That's just speculation. And that's fine. Just admit it though. That was a little bit of a side note. That's not even a big deal to me personally. That's just more like calling out hypocrisy in my eyes. Another aspect that frustrates me here is that most of the time early access games are on PC only, even if it's a game that's eventually going to come to other platforms at launch. So you're locking people out of the opportunity to play it that don't have access to a good PC, or those that just don't want to play on PC like me. When I have an option, I'm going to choose something else. Honestly, the biggest thing for me with something like Hades 2 is that I'm very interested in it because I liked Hades 1 a lot. I don't want stuff spoiled for me, and I'm not necessarily talking about story spoilers. I would assume that developers wouldn't really mess with that. They wouldn't want that to be the case. I'm more so talking about gameplay spoilers. I don't want to know like how the weapons work or how the game works. I don't want to know any of that. I want to wait until I get my own hands on the game to experience it for myself. Now, since the game's in early access, if anybody tries to come up to me and talk to me about this, I have to be like, no, shut up, I don't want to hear it, don't tell me. And for an extended period of time, as they like drip feed people with new things, I'm gonna have to avoid all media surrounding it too. This is already a problem leading up to games in general, but it's made worse when games go into early access. Nowadays, due to the normalization of this process, when this game came out in early access, people are being like, Hades 2 is out, and I'm like, it's not out. I don't want to play it when it's in a state that's not finished, and then when the game's finally out, I gotta start over from the beginning and replay it. That's not how I experience video games. I want to go into a game having experienced nothing. That's what I want. That's my main problem with early access. I want to experience a game from start to finish in sequential order and not have these weird like spliced together, potentially out of order, potentially unfinished thing to do first. I don't know why would you want that? there's so many other things I could be playing right now that are in a finished state. I'll just wait until this is. And the problem with that is that other people are playing it and they are talking about it, and I want to talk about it because I love Hades, and I'm probably gonna love Hades too, and now I'm missing out on the initial conversation. Now, by the time the game comes out, for real, I'm gonna jump into it and I'm gonna be like, oh, this is cool, and people are gonna be like, yeah, did that last year, bro. Anyways, moving on. And I'm like, no, this conversation's ruined now. This sucks. Now I'm late to this. This conversation isn't as interesting. We're not experiencing things at the same time. That's part of my enjoyment with video games. When something like Elden Ring or Zelda or Hades, anything that's like a truly great video game comes out, people are having lots of different experiences playing it. Part of the joy of the game is sharing my experiences with other people and seeing how things were done differently and stuff. When we're not on the same page because you've already played the game for a year, that sucks. All of a sudden it's skewed. We're not in the same place. We're not having an even conversation. We're not having the same experience. And that's why I don't like early access. It does play out a little differently when it's a game that I wasn't necessarily aware of or as interested in going into it, and I kind of discover it later. Then I'm not necessarily worried about this because that's on me. I'm late to the party. That's fine. But when I'm not late to the party, but I'm intentionally having to like withhold myself from the party because I don't want to experience the game what I deem as incorrectly, then I feel like I'm being punished. While Hades is still on the mind, is it just me or does the spear spinning attack in Hades make your pareidolia go off and make you picture a Beyblade? Thanks, Hookie. Anyways, moving on. I actually bought into early access with Rogue Legacy 2 because I love Rogue Legacy. I was very excited for the sequel, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna get into this early access and see what this is about. This was a few years ago now. And basically all it was is that you could play the first level or so. And it was cool. Then it was over, and then I had to wait for a year to play the rest of it. And like that completely ruins the experience when I finally got the game itself. The beginning of the game had already been played, and it felt weird to go back through that. I don't like that experience. But that just showed me that that's not an experience that I want to continue to put on myself for other games. And especially because I didn't like commit to the early access bit, where they consistently kept updating it and adding new to it as it got closer to the full release. I don't want to deal with the shenanigans of playing a game like a piece at a time. Like it takes you in and out of the experience over and over again, and I just don't want that. So those are my issues with early access. I'm gonna cut the fuck out of this 14 minutes, and I will not. I promised it would be under 8 minutes. We'll see. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm sure plenty of you disagree with what I'm saying here, so let me know. And I will see you next week. Check out my backlogged, my Twitch, and my Patreon in the description. Thank you to those who support me on Patreon. Hookie, Mech, Scion, and Kinoth. Alright, see ya!